o'clock. I'm sure more people will trickle in as the hour begins, but I will get started and share an introduction. Let me just try and hide all my screens. All right. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Amber Rowden. I'm the community storyteller at Rainforest, Alberta, here in Calgary. We have Bridget Legault, who's the community manager in Calgary. She'll be joining us a little bit later. If you haven't been to a Lunch Without Lunch, this is our weekly connection to connect innovators, doers, dreamers, builders, and our weekly connection to get to know each other and kind of know what's happening in the tech and innovation space, the entrepreneurship space. We have a group in Edmonton. They have a steering committee that also does in-person events up in Edmonton. So you can follow along with us at Rainforest AB and at Rainforest YEG. It is Lunch Without Lunch, but if you have lunch, please feel free to eat your lunch. I don't want anyone to starve over the hour. That's never a good time. So I want to start off the land acknowledgement. So in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nation, the Métis Nation, Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. So if you're coming from somewhere else in the province, in the country, or in the world, please share a land acknowledgement in the chat. And if you're interested in sharing a land acknowledgement and reconciliation at the beginning of Lunch Without Lunch or with the Rainforest Alberta community and movement, please contact me or Bridget. We would love to keep doing reconciliation work and connect with people, folks that are doing work in that area to continue creating reconciliation within the community at Rainforest Alberta. So what is Rainforest Alberta? Well, we are a community of innovators. We are committed to creating a culture of trust, of inclusivity, of diversity, of creating new ideas and working together collaboratively to build those ideas. So we have a video here to kind of explain what Rainforest Alberta is all about.
What does it take to realize an idea or for a seed to sprout? At Rainforest Alberta, we know the answer is rooted in trust. Traditionally, Albertans have cultivated their ideas in established systems. Inputs that don't fit these systems are weeded out. Opportunities for growth are missed. But now, Albertans want a dynamic landscape that can evolve organically, like a rainforest. At Rainforest Alberta, we believe a culture of trust is the fertile soil where ideas grow. Our budding innovation ecosystem is a network of relationships pulling each other up as they push forward in their own field. Trust breaks down barriers. An open, inclusive network increases collaborative innovation. Successful breakthroughs inspire new ideas. A cycle begins. Rainforest Alberta is a movement to amplify trust by cultivating honesty, inclusion, and accountability. How? Our social contract holds us accountable to demonstrate trust across the province. We meet to have honest conversations around collaboration. This leads to more inclusive spaces for everyone to fearlessly build new ideas together. By raising the standard of trust, Alberta's ideas, talent, and resources can be evergreen. Visit rainforestab.ca to sign the social contract and start growing together.
So we use 6 pillars to guide our conversations and actions, and not all are weighted equally. In an ecosystem, the right balance is crucial, and we measure these each year through our scorecard assessment. So in past years, Calgary has had a scorecard and Edmonton has had a scorecard assessment, and this is to measure the strengths and weaknesses of the ecosystem. But this year we're doing a pan-provincial scorecard, so we're looking at everywhere across of Alberta to see how we can strengthen the ecosystem. That'll be coming out in January, February sometime, so stay tuned for that. So we measure culture the highest at Rainforest, and this is, building a culture of trust, building a culture of like-mindedness, to build new ideas, to build a culture of inclusivity, of belonging. 20% are leaders, so those are people that we look up to in the ecosystem. 15% are resources. These are partners that we work with, like Platform Calgary, 321, the Calgary Innovation Coalition, all sorts of partners in the ecosystem to bring resources to the community. 10% for engaged activities, so every event that's happening in the ecosystem, such as Lunch Without Lunch and partner events. 15% for policy and infrastructure, that's policy and like government policy, and then 10% for role models, so people that we look up to in the ecosystem, in the community. So tips to making the most out of Lunch Without Lunch: introduce yourself in the chat. If you're new to Lunch Without Lunch, please put an emoji on the screen. I forgot to do that at the beginning, so put an emoji on the screen if you're new. Also introduce yourself in the chat if you're new. If you've been around for a while, please also introduce yourself. It's great to make those connections and kind of help facilitate those conversations. You can connect with individuals through direct messaging. Put your camera on. It's great to see everyone, especially in the virtual world. Ask questions that lead with curiosity rather than offering advice. You can ask questions and connect on our digital community, which I will go into. You can check out #lunch notes for a capture of today's chat, which is on our Slack channel. Once you sign our social contract, you'll receive an onboarding email, which will give you access to our Slack channel, our digital community, and just kind of some etiquettes for the community. And if you have any trouble getting onto that, please contact me or Bridget, and we're happy to get you on there. And our recordings, Lunch Without Lunch recordings, are always posted on YouTube. So if you want to watch a session back, or you're not able to stay for all of today's session, you can watch it back on YouTube to check out what you missed. So the social contract are 10 values that we work, live, and play by. Anyone that joins the community, we always ask them to sign the social contract, to commit to these 10 values when you're building ideas in your relationships with other people, in your connections, just to create, a culture of trust and being a good person. So if you scan that QR code, that'll take you to the social contract. I'll also throw the link in the chat so you can access it that way as well. And so our digital community is a great place to discover new learnings, connect with people across Alberta. You can ask questions that are directly matched to people that have the answers to those questions. I know a lot of people are like, well, there's ChatGPT, there's Google. Sure, those give you answers, but they don't give you these precise answers that connect you with diverse perspectives and diverse answers that actual people can give you, and you can connect with them after, which is something that's really powerful. And that tacit knowledge is something that you can't find anywhere else. So highly recommend that you join our digital community. It's really easy to sign up. You can scan that QR code. I will also put the link in the chat. And just start asking questions, asking questions, connect with people. It's really fun. I promise. If you have any trouble or any questions with that, please contact me or Bridget as well. And I believe that is it for me. So I am excited to share our guest speakers today. They're with the Gateway to Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Hub. We have Carol and Sahana here to share with us today. So I will pass it on to them.
Hi. This is my first meeting, obviously, but Carol's told me a lot about Rainforest Alberta, and I've been listening to what you've been talking about, Amber, and there's so much similarity and alignment with what I have to share and what Rainforest is doing. And so I can totally see why Carol was very insistent that we be here, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I want to acknowledge that I'm on Treaty 7 territory today, but I usually live in Treaty 6, specifically in Amiskwachi-Waskahigan, colonially known as Edmonton. I am a queer brown woman, immigrant settler from India, and I've made Canada my home for the last 25 years. I'm joined by Carol. So Carol, I don't know if everyone knows Carol, but Carol, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I see a few faces that are familiar to me. I haven't been at Rainforest in quite a while, but I'm always at the Rainforest in person. As I said in the chat there, I'm a people person and I love meeting people in person. I have been with Rainforest since 2017 when it was at the Chambers of Commerce, I think on 2nd Street there. Al Deldegan was the one that got me introduced to Rainforest. And back then, they made newcomers introduce themselves in front of everybody. And that was quite nerve-wracking. I'm glad that introductions are now done on chat. So you don't have to be in front of a whole bunch of people. But I remember the first Rainforest I had, there was at least 80 people in the room, and it was a lot. But I'm definitely a community connector. I don't know, some people have called me a maven. Some people called me a doc. I don't know. Doc was director of community. Whatever it is, regardless, I'm here to help you guys find resources and connections within our ecosystem. I'm also a part of many organizations here in Calgary. But right now, my full-time work is near and dear to my heart at the GEDI Hub. And what we do is we help create, improve, audit, basically your organization's hiring needs when it comes to hiring people in diversity or inclusion. So I will leave the floor now to Sahana to introduce who GEDI is.
Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
I'm going to turn on the, I would recommend that people turn on closed caption. Amber, would you be able to help out with that? I can't seem to see
Yeah, I will. I've never done that. I'm gonna see if I can.
And if people also want to leave on chat while Amber's looking at that, what are some accommodations you might need? I know we have an hour, correct, Amber? Is that an hour long? Or we have until 1 o'clock?
Yeah, so presentation about like 20 minutes or so, and then we'll do some Q&A, and then we'll go into networking.
Okay. That'll help me pace myself. Are there any accommodations people need? Other than that, please leave in the chat. I can't see the chat, so Carol, do you mind monitoring the chat? And at any point, people want to ask a question, comment, just if you want to use the emoticons to raise a hand, that'd be very useful. And Carol, if you don't mind moderating that as well. All right. So, I don't want to make an assumption of the crowd here. I don't know all of you. What I do know is that some of us have jobs where we have decision-making power on how inclusive we want to create that environment. Some of us have jobs where we don't have that decision-making power. And some of us are maybe not working right now, but do care about what organizations need to look like. One of the first things that's on your, Amber, one of your slides was about culture, right? And in terms of what your focus area is. And really, that's what I'm here to talk to you about, culture. And what is that? And what do we need to look at? So as Carol said, GEDI Hub, which stands for Gateway to Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Hub. I want to take a minute here to talk a little bit about Gateway and how GEDI Hub came to being. Gateway Association was started by families that had children with disabilities back in 1975. They wanted to start a safe space for families who actually valued their children, wanted to make sure the kids were included in all aspects of life and community. And just to give you a sense, in the 70s, it was still a time of forced sterilization for people with disabilities. There was forced institutionalizing of people with disabilities. So these families were known as dissident families or rebels, essentially mainly because they wanted to care about their child, or they saw their child was capable of a lot more. So that's really been the founding principles of Gateway, is to look at where there is obvious injustice, especially when it comes to inclusion, and creating opportunities for people to speak for themselves on what inclusion means to them. So over the decades, Gateway has been operating as a family resource center in Edmonton. And now we have an employment resource center where we support job seekers with disabilities in Edmonton and Calgary. And last year, we initiated this project known as GEDI. For the most part, when it comes to employment, we are talking to employers in terms of, what they think inclusion looks like in their offices, in their businesses, and we often are also talking to job seekers in terms of what kind of jobs they're looking for. So we proposed to the federal government that what we don't have in Alberta, and actually quite across, it's common across the Canada, what we don't have in Alberta is a workplace resource center just for employers, just for businesses, nonprofits, for-profits, even if you're an entrepreneur, even if it's a one-person company, it doesn't matter. What we don't have is a resource center that is at no cost to employers to gain more skills, to have a safe place to talk and brainstorm and come up with ways in which they can be more inclusive. So that's really what this conversation is going to be about. Is I want to share a little bit about why we exist, why equity, diversity, inclusion is important from a disability lens, from a racialized newcomer lens, and from the Indigenous lens, and ultimately how you can access us ongoing. So that's what this presentation is going to be about. Here we are, Carol and Sahana. Both of us are in Treaty 7 today. So what's GEDI Hub? Like I said, we're a province-wide network and are offering opportunities to workplaces to increase their equity, diversity, inclusion resources. And I think the important piece here is that we are able to offer services in person if you're in Calgary and Edmonton, and it's virtual and outreach if you're elsewhere. Why GEDI Hub? I think the important aspect of why GEDI Hub is, as you can see, there is a huge untapped talent. And this talent is not limited to persons with disabilities, even though that's what Gateway's mission is. The untapped talent is also amongst racialized newcomers. It's also among Indigenous job seekers, along with folks with disabilities. So we're really looking at the importance of tapping into talent that people don't even consider accessing when they need to hire someone. And at the same time, there are some primary reasons why we are running into a major shortage when it comes to labor. So GEDI Hub's goal is to connect employers that are thinking about diversifying or creating more inclusive workplace cultures to service providers that support job seekers. So you directly, as an employer, would be connected to a service provider, and you can access talent that you can hire for your organizations. Along with this connection comes the EDI journey. Knowing that EDI is a journey and not a destination is a really important distinction, because there's a lot of learning to do. We talked about reconciliation at the beginning. Amber, you talked about what that means to Rainforest Alberta. And I think part of this work is knowing that reconciliation is a journey. It's not a destination. You don't do two things and say, okay, you're working towards reconciliation, right? So similarly, equity, diversity, inclusion is a journey. And GEDI Hub has been positioned to support all employers on that journey. The question most people ask is, why do we need to look beyond what we're already doing? We go to Indeed.com, have job postings up there, people sign up, apply, we interview them, and bang, we have someone working in our organizations, in our businesses. Why do we need to be thinking about beyond that? Why do we need to think beyond the usual demographics that we tend to hire? So the first thing is 60% of people globally are living in countries with shrinking workforces. So that means the number of the members, participants in a labor pool are decreasing. And the other fact that I think everyone knows here is 25% of Canada's workforce will basically not be, will have to be fulfilled in different ways. So there are lots of folks, baby boomers, aging out. So who's going to replace them? That's a big piece. Now, the reason why GEDI Hub is very passionate about this project and in the work that Gateway is doing is because of this sentence that you see in pink. While there are untapped labor pools, while immigration is going to help us fill in those gaps, and while someone might think that Indeed.com is good enough to find employees, what we need to factor in is that with the changing times, trends globally, not just in Canada, workplaces that have diversity, workplaces where it's not just about having people from different communities and cultures, but a workplace where they feel included, where they can bring their authentic selves to work. That's what we mean by diversity. It's not about having difference. Different is not diverse. Diversity is where their difference would be accepted and loved and invited and created room for. That's what diversity really means. And that is diversity, inclusion, and the culture of the workplace are major factors when people decide their jobs, what jobs they want to apply to. It's no longer, these are my qualifications, what job can I get? Millennials, especially, including Gen Z, are looking at the culture of the workplace that they want to be in. And it's about being an employer of choice. And like I said, even if you're an entrepreneur with just you and one more person working for your company, you want to expand one day, you want to hire the best talent. And the best talent is going to look for how inclusive are you. Even if your budget is less than $1 million or less than 500,000 or less than 200,000, what kind of a culture do you have for that 2-person team, for that 3-person team? It's not just about 500 people into it. So what can we do to make ourselves sustainable? So this is the big part about the culture that I was talking about. So the biggest piece is that not having an inclusive culture is considered as a threat to your company's performance as well. And what does that mean? The threat is whether it's Harvard Business Review, including McLean's Business Review. The biggest threat is when people don't feel that they can be accepted, that they can bring their authentic selves to work. And why is that happening? Because not many people understand what culture is. And I'm very curious to know what Rainforest's definition of culture is. In EDI journeys, culture refers to workplace behavior. And these workplace behaviors are based on assumptions, habits, values, beliefs, and how many workplaces are actually talking about these matters. It's not enough for these values to be on your website. It's not enough for these values to be, in your employee manual. How can these values be demonstrated? And how does that slowly impact your culture to be a space where folks want to come and be a part of it? Attracting talent. Again, attracting talent is not about tokenizing people and having, different groups of people working at your organization or your business. It's really about attracting talent that wants to stay. It's about job retention. It's about them seeing the value that you have to offer and the value that they can bring into your workspace. And how people, I think I'm trying to remember where I heard the stat that 41% of workforce across the globe are leaving their jobs, even though 39% of them don't know where they're going to go next. So attracting talent is becoming a bigger challenge in many areas. And it's not just GEDI Hub, but what a lot of supported employment organizations, which is people like Gateway and Chrysalis and Inclusion Alberta, one of the things that we see is employers are very quick at recruiting people, but they're not good at retaining the talent. And that becomes word of mouth. A lot of people nowadays ask, hey, how is that company? Should I work for them? Your website, no matter how glorious your website is, doesn't matter. So culture is something that is being shared with others. It's an experience that someone has that they're sharing with others. So how do you want to improve on that culture? So these are some demographic trends that I already talked about in terms of what's happening to the labor market in terms of people that you want to hire. And we talked a little bit about diversity and why that matters. And when I talked about bringing authentic selves to work, it's also about bringing your perspectives to work. And diverse perspectives that are valued lead to better products, better performance, better productivity. And your customer base is looking at the diversity within your organization to see if they can trust what you have to offer or not. So that's something to think about. And diversity is much bigger than race, sexual orientation, religion, gender, age, disability. It transcends that. Inclusion is our brains have evolved over 4 million years to perceive social connections as essential to our survival. We survived as a species because we lived in groups. We're hardwired to perceive relatedness as safe. So when strong reactions to threat happen, then our inclusion in spaces are at risk. So what does that threat look like? I think quite often people are used to thinking about discrimination as very overt. But microaggressions that you cannot quantify, qualify, it's a feeling. And for a long time, they were not as emphasized as important for a workplace culture. But microaggressions are the biggest threat to workplace inclusion. So that's something to think about and learn more about, and to have within your policy, to have it as a practice, a procedure, so that folks know what can identify what microaggressions are. Someone you just hired and onboarded to your organization already knows what microaggressions are. And if that's something that they may default to, that would be a big acknowledgement that would not be acceptable. So you are, as organizations, as businesses, the EDI journey is not just about the journey on how you want to move your organization towards a more inclusive and diverse space, but it is also how you want to begin the journey of a brand new employee. How do you want to help existing employees, especially those who've been there for decades, shift their mindset around this? October is Disability Employment Awareness Month. And on Monday, we had the kickoff at City Hall. One of the pieces that Mayor Jyoti Gondek said that made me realize that she really gets it is when she said that mindset is the biggest barrier to inclusion. It's not the ramp. It's not the, do we have accessible doors? Do we have accessible bathrooms? But it's the mindset. Because the mindset is already looking at what's not accessible. How do I make it more accessible? But if you have a checklist of, is the door accessible? Is the bathroom accessible? Then you're not really thinking through where else we need to be accessible. So inclusion is a big piece of that. When it comes to equity, a really good example. So you might have heard, a lot of people say diversity, inclusion, equity, but what does that mean? Equality is giving everyone a shoe. And I think we know this. Up until mid-2000s, equality was the one word that we were all fighting for. But equity is giving everyone a shoe that fits. Again, this is a journey that a lot of businesses are yet to have. 95% of the clients that we work with don't know the difference. Neither have they created any policy that speaks to equity. So this is a pretty big issue and definitely plays into workplace culture. So what's Jedi Hub's role here? I think I might be going too late, Amber. I'm sorry. I just need a few more minutes. We started a bit late.
You're good.
Our mission at Jedi Hub is to build employer capacity. And please remember that it doesn't matter where you are on your journey. It's about where you want to go and how we can help you get there. And not knowing is okay. And saying, I don't know, is also okay. Our vision is that we are helping create workplaces where people can bring their fully authentic selves. This makes a big difference. One of the ways in which we do this. So essentially, we have various events happening throughout the year and even as on a weekly basis. So the idea is that once you know about what Jedi has to offer, and I'm not going to go too detailed into this because this might be something that you want to review in front of you on a website or a brochure, and Carol and I will make sure that you get it. But one of the ways in which Jedi is tactically addressing this is we work with clients. So number one, if an employer, even like I said, even if it's a one-person entrepreneurship, wants to contact us and begin their journey, they can. The second is we have weekly workshops. So you can register, drop in, attend the workshop, learn something, network with people that have come to the workshop, talk to each other. And we have so many different topics. So if you go to our website, you'll see all the different topics and different dates. So that's another way. The third is events. Recognizing that, there are a lot of employers doing really good work, but they're not necessarily talking to each other about their equity journey. Neither they're talking to each other about the barriers that they have when they're trying to hire inclusively. So if you're not talking to each other, how are you going to learn about it? Similarly, organizations that support job seekers from equity deserving groups, such as disability. Another equity deserving group is Indigenous job seekers. And the third equity deserving group is racialized newcomers. These three have been recognized and identified as it's barely tapped. It's the most untapped labor pool in Alberta. And we are bringing together service providers, essentially organizations that help job seekers from these three groups in touch with employers because they need to learn about each other. They need to talk to each other. The piece that most people don't know is that service providers are not just here to help match talent, but they're also here for the long haul. So if you hire someone through a service provider, you have the service provider support ongoing as long as you need. So they may help come problem solve, may help with communication, may help build employer capacity on how to better understand the job seeker or the employee, and also help the employee better understand employer. Because again, we have to remember for decades and decades and decades, there are groups of people that have never been, they have been oppressed. They've experienced systemic racism. They've experienced marginalization on all levels of society, government. So there is a lot of bias and myths and stereotypes about job seekers from these untapped pools. So in the process, employers are missing out on a whole group of talent. And it's not even talent that they have experienced so far. It's a new kind of talent. So really, the more time people spend with each other, and I think that's what Rainforest is doing as well. You bring diversity of people into the space where you're talking and you're learning, and there's role modeling and resource sharing and what have you. Similarly, we are also trying to create events. In fact, we have been having events to bring people together to share these ideas. But it's mostly around equity, diversity, and inclusion. So that's the biggest difference. So those are some opportunities to us. And again, I think some of these pieces, I'm going to send it to you by email. Amber, if you don't mind sharing with your group on ways in which you can access us. Even if you don't want to contact us, you can still access some resources through the website. And yeah, that's us. Anyone can reach out to us. GEDI, GEDI, at gatewayassociation.ca is your main contact. Please reach out and let us know how we can help you on this journey. or how you want to help us on this journey. Help goes both ways. Learning happens both ways. So we'd like to see how you want to be involved as well. If you don't mind grabbing your phones and scanning this QR code and filling out a survey, that'd be really important. We use these surveys to gain more information on, maybe how else could we better curate this information that we give out, so we can be more useful. Questions?
Thank you so much, Sahana. That was great. I love the alignment between both of our organizations and the community, and so this is really great. And yeah, does anyone have any questions? Please feel free to put them in the chat or just unmute. Ling.
Hi, Sahana.
Hi.
It's Pete here. Just wondering, are there government supported incentives that go along with this as well?
For example, I think in a wage subsidy.
Yeah, like a subsidy or bringing somebody in and there's, dollars to support their income or that sort of stuff.
Okay, so when you connect, so if an employer is ready to hire inclusively, we would connect you to service providers in your area. Some service providers, not all, some service providers have wage subsidy incentives associated with their programs. And they would definitely, so if you say, hey, we want to understand how to be more inclusive in our job postings, for example, and how to interview people in a more inclusive way, we feel we're a bit ready. Can you connect us to a service provider? And we want a service provider that has wage subsidy incentives, then that's what we would do. We would put a call out and see who would be interested and connect you to them.
Thank you.
No problem. Hi, Bridget.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm driving here today, and I have been and will be for the next month due to some childcare challenges that I'm facing. But thanks to GEDI Hub for coming today. I'm the community manager. We haven't met. Sahana, so nice to have you. And Carol, we know all too well, and we love her. So thanks for coming. My question for you all is, our core audience is startups. We also have kind of some small to medium enterprise entrepreneurs and founders. So if they were to, let's say they either have existing policies or are looking to create new policies, what would that journey look like in working with you? And I know you touched on it a bit here and there, but can you give us kind of a clear path of what that looks like for these founders and entrepreneurs?
Yes, absolutely. Great question, Bridget. So as soon as a client, such as a company, business, whoever, reaches out to us, we send them an initial consultation form that tries to gather some information on where they're at, what they need, and so on. And we typically ask a question, which is, what problem are you trying to solve? And that gives us some idea. So we start off with the initial consult form, and then we assign a consultant who will get in touch with you within a couple of weeks. So when the consultant gets in touch with you, they would be reviewing that form and maybe asking more questions. And essentially, you would develop a work plan. A lot of folks that say, hey, we want a policy change, for example, realize that maybe they also need a little bit of an EDI committee at work that can inform all policies and not just one policy. So, and maybe there's some others who might say, we just need help with the policy, so that consultant would work with them or bring in another of their colleagues to help with policy. We have 8 consultants, and all of them have different specializations. So for Indigenous policy, for example, we work with a partner on that. Then we have, when it comes to policy around sexual orientation and gender inclusion, we have somebody else that we would bring in on that. So that's what would happen. So a work plan would be developed. Maybe it's policy, maybe it's more than that needs to be addressed. So that would be determined. A timeline would be developed in terms of, hey, what's a timeline of the client? What's Gateway's timeline that we could probably work with? And then finally, when something would be completed. And of course, along the way, you could be accessing any of our workshops to increase capacity along the way.
Yeah, what an incredible resource for our city. So I encourage everyone to share this as widely as they can, because like many of our organizations in the ecosystem have been looking for this support, and it can be quite costly when hiring consultants or practitioners in this area. So let's make sure to share this with all our startup friends and founders.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times, I don't know if people know this, but when you think about EDI or working with a consultant, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And we proposed that we want to help transform this sector, transform the employer sector in Alberta, because we have so much untapped potential. And so we were able to make a case for why we need to have something like GEDI Hub that is completely free of cost. This is quite special to Alberta. It doesn't exist anywhere in Canada. And I would say people, even if you want to get on the journey to see how you want to be inclusive in the future, it's still a good place to start. Our workshops, twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 to 12. I put our website in the chat for folks. And as I said, Carol and I will make sure that you get a little bit of a cheat sheet on what you can access where, so that, yeah, you can access us and tell your friends about us.
Incredible. Thank you.
Anyone else, or is this good, Amber, for now?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing that. And yeah, I would love to connect with you both and like send me any resources that I can share with the community, on our social and Slack and everything, and happy to share that out as well. If you're both able to stay for some breakout rooms, that would be great. I'll probably have time for one or two before we have community announcements. So if you have any community announcements as well, please get those ready. Those will be happening at 12:55. And please stick around for breakout rooms. I know it's a small group, but that's where the magic happens. That's where you connect with each other. You can chat about what you learned today and continuing that conversation forward. Just really get to know one another and how you can help and collaborate with each other. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms. And yeah, we should have time for another one as well. Everyone, I know that was a little bit short of networking time, but we are at the community announcement portion of the session. And one quick announcement: next week, Lunch Without Lunch will be hybrid. So we are going to be in person at the Open Learning Lab, which is downtown. I will throw in the address in the chat. But please, if you could join us in person, that would be fantastic. We have Sean Crump from Included by Design joining us. And if you are joining us, you can join us online as well. And then Bridget just quickly wants to share an announcement with us as well. So I'll pass it over to Bridget.
Yeah, I'll leave it to Amber to throw it in the chat if that's okay. Whoop, just about rolled my ankle there. Walking downtown. Can't do things at once. Platform Calgary has just launched a kind of a revival of their Startup 101 and Discover programs. So if you have any friends, and we all do, who have once said, I have this great idea, or I should build an app for that, or, whatever it might be. This might be their opportunity to explore that idea through these programs. So Amber will throw it in the chat. And if anyone has any questions or wants to be directed to advisors at platform, let us know. Thank you. Yeah, really interesting programming there for kind of like language and ways around the ecosystem in the Startup 101 program, like what is a startup, what would it even look like for me to start one, and then Discover, you do customer discovery and actually have a market. So check those out. And also we will be hosting in 15th, which will be geared towards potential or aspiring founders and entrepreneurs, as well as aspiring career pivoters or tech workers. And so if you have any friends who are curious about our sector, this is our opportunity to invite them into our bubble. And it'll be a really fun, interactive way to get to know the ecosystem. So we shared that in our newsletter this morning. If you didn't get it, You can probably throw it in the chat there too. So you're all more than welcome to come if you're familiar with the ecosystem, but bring a friend who is new.
Bradley, sorry, it's Lynn here. I was wondering if you have any like workshop on like how to find the grants or funding for like any new stuff, ideas or small business, like that. Thank you.
If you're looking to navigate those resources, certainly reach out to an advisor at Platform Calgary. They can help you do that. We for that paid as a paid service right here in the community. So if Stephen Leber is here or Val no, they're not here, sorry, here, but I can refer you to paid services to help you do that as well. But for free, talk to some advisors at Platform here first.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, Ross.
I've got my community announcement of next week on October 10th at 7 p.m. virtually, Civic Tech YYC. We're hosting an event with a couple of companies that have been doing drone flights in Calgary, testing out what the connectivity looks like across different wireless networks. So if you're interested in that aerospace or drones or any sort of technology, including advocating for better cellular access for people, go ahead and attend that session. Love to see you come out, and it should be pretty interesting, crossing over a bunch of different sectors.
Awesome, thank you. Peter.
Thriving Minds, and this is a on October the 19th, a lunch and session for how to develop the entrepreneurial mindset and what it takes to have mental wellness as an entrepreneur. It's a series that we're putting on, and come on out and have lunch with us and participate in the first session and bring somebody. The Eventbrite invitation is right there, and I think it's also in our newsletter. Right, Amber?
Yes, it's in the newsletter, the Rainforest newsletter, and it'll be on social as well. So it is 1 o'clock. I know people have to drop off. So if you have to drop off, please feel free to drop off. We'll continue with community announcements. Carol?
Just really quickly here, as a community and engagement lead here at GEDI, I'm always looking for employers and service providers. We have this huge event coming up. It's on November 9, and I'm looking for employers and service providers to collide. And it's going to be a fun event. It's all about activity. So it's going to be a storytelling / art event. So if you're artistic and you're creative and you want to tell your story, please reach out to me, because that would be a really, really fun event. Again, my contact information is carol@gatewayassociation.ca. Cool. Thanks everyone for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Carol. Appreciate having you here today. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next week in person.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank
Come
you.
in person.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.